Space Boy. Hi guys, welcome to Space Boy channel. So, you already saw some of our episodes about Uranus already. So, it's time to learn about the planet on its own. So, today's topic will be on the planet of Uranus. This episode will be a very long episode. So, we will split it into part 1 and 2 on the same episode. Part 2 will appear after the interval. So, let's begin! The first thing that comes in your mind when you think about the planet of Uranus is cold. Yeah, it's the coldest planet in the solar system. Its average temperature is negative 371 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you probably guessed why it is the coldest planet in the solar system. Like the classical planets, Uranus is visible to the naked eye. But the ancient people didn't identify Uranus as a planet because of its dimness and slow orbit. Sir William Herschel was the first to discover Uranus as a planet on 13th March 1781, expanding the known boundaries of the solar system and making Uranus the first planet classified as such. The first segment is history. The planet of Uranus have been observed several times before its recognition as a planet. Possibly the oldest known observation was by Hipparchus, who in 128 BCE used it as a star for his star catalogue. That was later incorporated into Ptolemy's Almagest. The earliest definite sighting was in 1690 when John Flamsteed observed it at least 6 times, cataloguing it as 34 Tauri. The French astronomer Pierre-Charles de Monnier observed Uranus at least 12 times between 1750 and 1769, including on 4 consecutive nights. Sir William Herschel observed Uranus on 13 March 1781 from the garden of his house at 19 New King Street in Bath, Somerset, England, now the Herschel Museum of Astronomy, and initially reported it on 26 April 1781 as a comet with a homemade 6.2-inch reflecting telescope. Herschel engaged in a series of observations on the parallax of the fixed stars. Herschel recorded it in his journal in the quartile near Tauri, either a nebulous star or perhaps a comet. On 17 March, he noticed, "I looked for the comet or a nebulous star and found that it is a comet, for it has changed its place." When he presented his discovery to the Royal Society, he continued to assert that he found a comet, but also implicitly compared it to a planet. The power I had on when I first saw the comet was 227. From experience, I know that the diameters of the fixed stars are not proportionally magnified with higher powers as planets are Therefore, I now put the powers at 460 and 932 and found that the diameter of the comet increased in proportion to the power as it ought to be on the supposition of its not being a fixed star, while the diameters of the stars to which I compared it were not increased in the same ratio. Moreover, the comet, being magnified much beyond what its light would admit of, appeared hazy and ill-defined with these great powers, while the star preserved that luster and distinctness which from many thousand observations I knew that they would retain. The sequel has shown that my surmises were well founded, this proving to the comet we have lately observed. Herschel notified the Astronomer Royal Neville Maskelyne of his discovery and received this foremost reply from him on 23 April 1781. I don't know what to call it. It is as likely to be a regular planet moving in an orbit nearly circular to the Sun as a comet moving in a very eccentric ellipsis. I have not yet seen any coma or tail to it. Although Herschel continued to describe his new object as a comet, other astronomers had already begun to suspect otherwise. Finnish-Swedish astronomer Anders Johann Lexell, working in Russia, was the first to compute the orbit of the new object. Its nearly circular orbit led him to a conclusion that it was a planet rather than a comet. Berlin astronomer Johann Elert Bird described Herschel's discovery as a moving star that can be deemed a hitherto unknown planet-like object circulating beyond the orbit of Saturn. Both concluded that its near circular orbit was more like a planet than a comet. The object was soon universally accepted as a new planet. By 1783, Herschel acknowledged this to Royal Society President Joseph Banks. By the observation of the most eminent astronomers in Europe, it appears that the new star, which I had the honor of pointing out to them in March 1781, is a primary planet of our solar system. In recognition of his achievement, King George III gave Herschel an annual stipend of £200, equivalent to £26,000 in 2021, on condition that he moved to Windsor so that the royal family could look through his telescopes. The next segment is name. I already explained it in a previous episode, but today I will explain it in detail. The name of Uranus references the ancient Greek deity of the sky, Uranus, known as Sailus in Roman mythology, the father of Cronus, Saturn, and grandfather of Zeus, Jupiter, which was rendered as Uranus in Latin. It is the only one of the 8 planets whose English name derives from a figure of Greek mythology. The adjectival form of Uranus is Uranian. The pronunciation of the name Uranus preferred among astronomers is Uranus, with stress on the first syllable as in Latin Uranus, in contrast to Uranus, with stress on the second syllable and a long A. Though both are considered acceptable, consensus on the name was not reached until almost 70 years after the planet's discovery. During the original discussions for a discovery, Maskelyne asked Herschel to do the astronomical world the favor to give a name to your planet, which is entirely your own, which we are so much obliged to you for the discovery of. In response to Maskelyne's request, Herschel decided to name the object Georgium Sidus, George Star, or Georgian planet, in honor of his new patron, King George III. He explained this decision in a letter to Joseph Banks. In the fabulous ages of ancient times, the appellations of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn were given to the planets as being the names of their principals, heroes, and divinities. In the present, more philosophical era, it would hardly be allowable to have recourse to the same method and call it Juno, Pallas, Apollo, or Minerva for a name to our new heavenly body. The first consideration of any particular event or remarkable incident seems to be its chronology. If in any future age it should be asked when this last found planet was discovered, it would be a very satisfactory answer to say in the reign of King George III. Herschel's proposed name was not popular outside of Britain and Hanover, and alternatives were not soon proposed. Astronomer Jerome Lalande proposed that it be named Herschel in honor of its discoverer. Swedish astronomer Erik Prosperin proposed the names Astrea, Cybele, now the names of asteroids, and Neptune, which would become the next planet to be discovered. The name was supported by other astronomers who liked the idea to commemorate the victories of the British Royal Naval fleets in the course of American Revolutionary War by calling the new planet even Neptune George III or Neptune Great Britain, a compromise like Searle suggested as well. Daniel Bernoulli suggested Hypercunus and Transaturnus. George Lichtenberg from Göttingen suggested Ostra, a goddess mentioned by Ovid, but who is traditionally associated with Virgo. The name Minerva was also proposed. In a March 1782 treatise, Bode proposed Uranus, the Latinized version of the Greek god of the sky, Uranus. Bode argued that the name should follow the mythology so as not to stand out as different from the other planets, and that Uranus was an appropriate name as the father of the first generation of the Titans. He also noted that the elegance of the name in that just as Saturn was the father of Jupiter, the new planet should be named after the father of Saturn. Bode was, however, apparently unaware that Uranus was the only Latinized form of the titular deity and his Roman equivalent was Salus. In 1789, Bode's Royal Academy colleague Martin Klaproth named his newly discovered element uranium in support of Bode's choice. Ultimately, Bode's suggestion became the most widely used and became universal in 1850 when H.M. Nautical Almanac Office, the final holdout, switched from using Georgium Sidus to Uranus. Uranus has two astronomical symbols. The first to be proposed was proposed by Johann Gottfried Koehler. At Bode's request in 1782, Koehler suggested that the new planet be given the symbol of platinum, which had been described scientifically only 30 years before, as there was no alchemical symbol for platinum. He suggested this symbol or this symbol, a combination of the planetary metal symbols gold and iron, as platinum or white gold is found mixed with iron. Bode thought that an upright orientation this fit better with the symbols for the other planets while remaining distinct. This symbol predominates in modern astronomical use in the rare cases that symbols are used at all. The second symbol was suggested by Lalande in 1784. In a letter to Herschel, Lalande described it as unglobe surmonté par la première lettre de votre nom, a globe surmounted by the first letter of your surname. The second symbol is nearly universal in astrology. Uranus is called by a variety of names in other languages. Uranus's name is literally translated as the Sky King Star in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese. In Thai, the official name is Dao Uranet, as in English. Its other name in Thai is Dao Marwatayu, Star of Mrityu, after the Sanskrit word for death, Mrityu. In Mongolian, its name is Tengarin Van, translated as King of the Sky, reflecting its namesake God's role as the ruler of the heavens. In Hawaiian, its name is Haleakala, the Hawaiian rendering of the same Herschel. In Maori, its name is Varangi. Phew, that was a lot of information. For a break, let's learn the names of the moons of Uranus. There are 27 moons for Uranus. They are Titania, Juliet, Miranda, Oberon, Umbriel, Ariel, Puck, Cressida, Cupid, Sycorax, Setebos, Trinculo, Juliet, Ophelia, Desdemona, Prospero, Bianca, Rosalind, Francisco, Cordelia, Perdita, Caliban, Mab, Stefano, Portia, Belinda, and Ferdinand. Okay, guys, so we have talked a lot in this episode. So it's time for a break. So, interval for 1 minute. Now, as the interval time finished, we will start part 2. It is argued that the differences between the ice giants and the gas giants arise from their formation history. The solar system is hypothesized to have formed from a rotating disk of gas and dust known as pre-solar nebula. Much of the nebulous gas, primarily hydrogen and helium, form the Sun, and the dust grains collected together to form the first protoplanets. As the planets grew, some of them eventually accreted enough matter for their gravity to hold on the nebula's leftover gas. The more gas they held on to, the larger they became. The more gas held on to until a critical point was reached and their size began to increase exponentially. The ice giants, with only a few Earth masses of nebulous gas, never reached that critical point. Recent simulations of planetary migration have suggested that both ice giants formed closer to the Sun than their present positions and moved outwards after the formation. The next segment is orbit and rotation. Uranus orbits the Sun once every 84 years. In 2033, the planet will have made its third complete orbit around the Sun since being discovered in 1781. The planet has returned to the point of its discovery northeast of Zeta Tauri twice since then, on 25 March 1865 and 29 March 1949. Uranus will return to its location again on 3 April 2033. Its average distance from the Sun is roughly 20 astronomical units, 3 billion kilometers, or 2 billion miles. The difference between its minimum and maximum distance from the Sun is 1.8 astronomical units, larger than that of any other planet, though not as large as that of the dwarf planet Pluto. The intensity of sunlight varies inversely with the square of distance, and so on. Uranus at about 20 times the distance from the Sun as compared to Earth. It is about 1/400th the intensity of light. On Earth, the orbital elements of Uranus were first calculated in 1783 by Pierre Simon Laplace. With time, discrepancies began to appear between the predicted and observed orbits, and in 1841 John Couch Adams first proposed that the differences might be due to gravitational tug of an unseen planet. In 1845, Urbain Le Verrier began his own independent research into Uranus's orbit. In 23 September 1846, Johann Gottfried Galle located a new planet, later named Neptune. Neptune was at nearly the same position predicted by Le Verrier. The rotational period of the interior of Uranus is 17 hours and 14 minutes. As on all giant planets, its upper atmosphere experiences strong winds in the direction of rotation. At some latitudes, such as about 60 degrees south, visible features of the atmosphere move much faster, making a full rotation in as little as 14 hours. The next segment is axial tilt. The Uranian axis of rotation is approximately parallel with the plane of the solar system, with an axial tilt of 97.77 degrees as defined by prograde rotation. This gives it seasonal changes completely unlike those of the other planets. Pluto and the protoplanet asteroid 2 Pallas also have extreme axial tilts. Near the solstice, one pole faces the sun continuously and the other faces away. Our channel's history says that this is the longest episode of our channel. Yes, almost 28 minutes. So, hope you learned something new in today's episode. Thank you and goodbye. Stay tuned, South America coming up next.